In the early 1970s, Chevrolet introduced a car that looked different from most others on the road. It had a chopped-off rear end and a strange name: Kammback. This car was the Chevrolet Vega Kammback GT wagon. It was supposed to be a mix of sporty design and useful space. But its story is not just about style or space. It is also about problems, rushed plans, and what happens when big ideas hit real-world challenges. The Chevrolet Vega was first made in 1971. It came from General Motors, one of the biggest car companies in the United States. The Kammback wagon was a special version of the Vega. It used a design idea from Wunibald Kamm, a German engineer. His design called for a roof that sloped down and then suddenly ended flat. This helped reduce wind drag, which made the car more efficient. But let us be honest, it also looked like someone had finished the car in a hurry. Chevrolet wanted the Vega to be more than just a small car, so they added the GT package. That meant a better suspension, special trim, and a stronger engine. The engine was a 2.3-liter inline four-cylinder with an overhead camshaft. It had an aluminum block and a cast-iron head. With the GT package, it had a 2-barrel carburetor and made around 110 horsepower and 138 pound-feet of torque. The Vega Kammback GT wagon had a wheelbase of 2,464 millimeters, was 4,310 millimeters long, and 1,661 millimeters wide. It weighed about 2,216 pounds. The cargo area was roomy, with over 1,422 liters of space when the back seats were folded. It had front disc brakes, rear drum brakes, and a suspension similar to the 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle. Over the years, the Vega changed. In 1972, Chevrolet added a 3-speed automatic transmission. In 1973, they made the bumpers stronger to handle 5-mile-per-hour crashes, which made the car longer. By 1974, the front end was redesigned. In 1976, Chevrolet made over 300 changes, including better cooling and rust protection. Despite all the upgrades, the Vega had issues. Engines failed too soon. The body rusted too fast. It got bad press. But even with all that, the Kammback GT wagon showed that Chevrolet was trying new ideas. Some worked, some did not. Still, you have to give them a little credit for trying to make a sporty wagon shaped like a bread loaf. In the late 1960s, the American car industry was full of ideas. Some were bold, some were practical, and some were a little strange. One car that quietly rolled through this era was the AMC Rebel SST wagon. It did not grab headlines like a muscle car, and it did not sell in giant numbers like a Ford or Chevrolet, but it had its own path. And if you like wagons with character, this one might surprise you. The American Motors Corporation, also known as AMC, was not as big as Ford or General Motors, but they tried to compete by being different. In 1957, AMC first used the name Rebel on a special model with a V8 engine. It was fast and powerful for its time. Then, the name disappeared for a few years. It came back in 1966, placed on the top version of the Rambler Classic. That set the stage for the full Rebel lineup in 1967. AMC dropped the Rambler name and used Rebel for their new midsize cars. The AMC Rebel SST wagon was the top trim level. SST stood for Super Sports Touring, even though that sounds a little fancier than what it really was. The SST wagon was meant to be practical, but a little nicer than the basic version. It was built on a unibody platform shared with AMC's Ambassador. It had coil spring suspension to keep the ride smooth, and enough space to haul the family, the dog, the luggage, and maybe even your neighbor's couch if needed. The dimensions of the wagon were not small. It was 5,029 millimeters long, 1,962 millimeters wide, and 1,440 millimeters tall. The wheelbase was 2,896 millimeters. It had a big fuel tank too, 81.5 liters. That helped because these cars were not exactly fuel efficient. Under the hood, there were several engine choices. In 1967, the base engine was a 3.8-liter inline-six with 145 horsepower. Then came a 4.7-liter V8 with 198 horsepower, a 4.8-liter with up to 225 horsepower, and a 5.6-liter V8 with up to 280 horsepower. By 1970, the biggest engine was a 5.9-liter V8 with 290 horsepower and 395 pound-feet of torque. That might not seem huge today, but back then, it could move the big wagon pretty quickly. Transmission options included a 3-speed manual, 3-speed automatic, and a 4-speed manual. AMC added some regional flavors in 1967. There was the Mariner Wagon with a silver side panel sold near the coasts. The Briarwood Wagon had rosewood trim and was sold in the eastern and southern United States. The Westerner Wagon had a fake wood plank style and was sold west of the Mississippi River. These were just station wagons with different stickers, but it was a creative try. The Rebel was made in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and Brampton, Ontario, Canada. It was also built in Mexico, Australia, and New Zealand. It ended production in 1970 and was replaced by the AMC Matador. That name sounds like it should fight bulls, but it mostly fought bad sales numbers. In 1970, AMC even made a muscle car version called the Machine, which had a 6.4-liter V8 and 340 horsepower. But sadly, there was no wagon version of the Machine, so no, you could not do a burnout while taking the kids to school in your Rebel wagon. Today, the AMC Rebel SST wagon is rare. Some are still around, sitting in garages or showing up at old car events. It was not the flashiest car, but it was different. It had space, power, and a name that tried to stand out. For some people, that is enough. In the early 1960s, the American car market was full of change, competition, and creative ideas. Some ideas worked, some did not. But few were as strange, bold, and different as the Studebaker Daytona Wagonaire. This car was made by the Studebaker Corporation, a company based in South Bend, Indiana. They were trying to stay in business by doing something no one else was doing, and that something was a sliding roof on a station wagon. The Studebaker Wagonaire was first made in the year 1963. It was based on the Studebaker Lark station wagon, but designer Brooks Stevens gave it a new twist. Stevens had earlier made a concept car called the 1959 Scimitar. That car had a roof that could slide open. Sherwood Egbert, who was the president of Studebaker at the time, asked Stevens to help make new models without spending too much money. Stevens took the idea from the Scimitar and used it for the Wagonaire. The result was a roof that could slide forward, opening up the back of the car. This was not just a weird idea. It had a reason. With the roof slid open, a person could carry tall items like a refrigerator or a ladder in the back of the car while keeping the rear gate closed. That might not sound exciting today, but back then, that was different. It was not a common thing to see a station wagon hauling furniture like a pickup truck. Studebaker sold the Wagonaire in 3 trim levels. There was the standard model, the Regal, and the sportier Daytona. The Daytona had extras like front bucket seats and sportier trim inside. It could even be fitted with a 289 cubic inch V8 engine that made 225 horsepower. That gave the wagon some muscle, though it still could not outrun a sports car. It went from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 15.6 seconds and had a top speed of around 84 miles per hour. Not fast, but it got the job done. The car came with other engines too. There was a 194 cubic inch inline 6 and a 259 cubic inch V8 that made 180 horsepower. The wheelbase was 113 inches, and the car was 194 inches long. It weighed about 3,300 pounds. That made it about average for a station wagon at the time. One fun fact, the sliding roof caused some trouble. Early versions leaked water when it rained. That is not something most families wanted to deal with. So Studebaker started offering a fixed roof version in early 1963, which cost 100 United States dollars less than the sliding roof version. The Wagonaire was made until 1966, the year Studebaker stopped making cars. Even though it was different, the Wagonaire could not save the company. In total, 11,915 station wagons were made in the first year alone. That included both sliding and fixed roof versions. The idea of a sliding roof did not go away forever, though. Years later, General Motors used a similar idea in the GMC Envoy XUF in the early 2000s. That model also had a sliding roof, but just like the Wagonaire, it did not stick around for long. It turns out people like roofs that do not leak. The Studebaker Daytona Wagonaire might not have been a big success, but it still stands out today. It was not trying to be flashy, it was just trying to be useful, and a little weird. Sometimes weird is all you have left when the company's falling apart. In 1957, something curious rolled off Pontiac's assembly lines. It was long, low, and full of chrome. It looked like it could haul a couch and still race the neighbor's convertible. This was the 1957 Pontiac Safari, and it was not your average family wagon. Built during a time when America was all about fins, V8 engines, and drive-in movies, the Safari was Pontiac's idea of a stylish, practical car. But there is more to it than just design. Its history, models, and the changes Pontiac made in 1957 tell a larger story. The Pontiac Safari name was not new in 1957. It had already been used in 1955 and 1956, but only for a two-door sport wagon based on the Pontiac Star Chief. Those earlier Safaris were flashy and expensive, but in 1957 Pontiac decided to expand the Safari name. Now, instead of one model, there were several. The Safari name now covered all Pontiac station wagons. That included the Chieftain Safari, the Super Chief Safari, and the Star Chief Custom Safari. The Chieftain Safari was the entry-level model. It came in two-door and four-door versions. It did the job, but did not have many fancy details. The Super Chief Safari sat in the middle. It had some upgrades in trim and features. The top of the line was the Star Chief Custom Safari. It came as a two-door sport wagon at first, but later in the year, Pontiac added the Star Chief Custom Safari Transcontinental. That one had four doors, a roof luggage rack, and special chrome side trim. Yes, even wagons wanted to look different back then. These cars were built on a 3,099mm wheelbase chassis. The Star Chief Custom Safari had some interesting features. Its B-pillars leaned forward and the rear windows could slide open. Inside, it had leather seats and better materials compared to the cheaper models, but you had to pay more for it. In 1957, the base price of the Star Chief Custom Safari was about $3,350 United States dollars. That was a lot for a wagon in those days. Under the hood, things were not small either. The 1957 Safari came with a 6.1-liter V8 engine. That is 370 cubic inches for the fans of big numbers. It made around 255 to 285 horsepower depending on the setup. You could say it was a wagon that did not like being slow. It had a manual synchro-mesh transmission. These cars could move, even with 6 people and a picnic basket inside. As for size, the Safari was not shy. It measured about 5,347 millimeters long and 1,910 millimeters wide. It stood 1,542 millimeters tall. The curb weight was around 4,173 pounds. That is heavier than most modern sedans. Seating capacity was 6, but you could probably squeeze in a 7th cousin if they did not complain too much. Production numbers were not high. Pontiac made 1,292 units of the two-door Star Chief Custom Safari. The four-door Transcontinental version had 1,894 units built. That makes them rare today, and people who collect classic cars like rare things, even the wagons. The 1957 Pontiac Safari may not be the most famous car of the 1950s, but it shows how car companies tried to mix style with practicality. It looked different, drove strong, and tried to offer something for everyone. Even if you never wanted a station wagon, this one at least makes you look twice.